All right, I'm going to call to order the work session for the town of Chincoteague for November the 19th, 2020. If we could all please stand for the invocation.
Let us pray. Dear Lord, tonight with all these assembled here in this room and those that are joining us online, we pray for all those that may be suffering tonight, most especially as a result of this pandemic. During this crisis, Lord, we pray God's mercy and healing for those that are sick and strength and help for those that take care of them. Let us not forget, Lord, what you teach us in John 8, verse 12. I am the light of the world. He who follows me will not walk in the darkness, but will have light of life. I pray that this nation embraces your light, and we cannot expect healing to come to our nation and stand apart from obedience in God and his holy word. I close this prayer tonight, Lord, lifting up the medical and scientific community who feverishly search for a cure, Lord. We are hopeful that news will come soon, that one is getting close. Lord, I just pray that you give them the knowledge and the strength to see this through. Lord, please continue to bless this great community that we are so privileged to live in. Bless those that protect us and our freedoms you provide us, Lord. Our frontline workers, EMS, law enforcement, and especially our troops. Lord, most of all, bless these United States of America today and forever. Long may she stand. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Rob or Mike, is there any public comment? Move on. No? No public comment. How about that? All right. All right. Okay, for our agenda tonight, we have to move one thing, item 7. We need to move it down to like item 12A. Needs to be our last item. Other than that, I'll entertain a motion as written to proceed.
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank y'all. Next on the agenda is a joint public hearing with the Planning Commission for a conditional use permit. Mr. Landsberger, do you need to open yours and then I'll open ours?
We have a quorum tonight, Mr. Mayor, so all those concerned, I state that the planning commission meeting for the purpose of the public hearing on Landsberger issue is open.
Okay. Thank you. All right, I'm going to call to order a public hearing to be open for the town of Chincoteague to hear this conditional use permit for Mr. David Landsberger. Yes, ma'am, sir.
State the commission's position.
Sure, please do.
At our last planning commission meeting, we had the opportunity to speak with Mr. Landsberger via teleconference. And although it was not a public hearing per se, it was something he had requested. We had the opportunity to ask a few questions, concerns that some of the commissioners had. At which time we indicated that we would make a motion that this particular public hearing as to whether we would approve or recommend approval of the standing. One of the clarifications that had to be established was the building itself, and I've talked to our building inspector as to that building's been there for some time. It's a legal building, it meets all requirements for safety, and that was one of the concerns. If the building itself was joined to the main building, there would be no issue. But the fact that it is separated is the reason that we're here. Based on those issues, from the standpoint of a conditional use can be granted either with caveats or without caveats, such as duration of the need, such as that. And at this point in time, I would ask any of the commissioners if they have any further comments.
No, I
So having stated that, from the standpoint of the commission, I would ask for a motion from the commissioners as to whether approve or disapprove the conditional use.
I
I have a
second.
motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. So moved. Your recommendation.
Thanks, sir. Have any public speak? So do it now. If not, hold the peace. Everybody stand. Public participation is closed. We do have an agenda or an approval from the planning commission. Seems to be pretty straightforward.
Absolutely.
Billy, if you want to chime in or.
No, I agree with what comments were made, and certainly anything we can do to help a resident and a citizen in a manner such as this, I wholeheartedly.
I agree with that. I'll make a motion to approve it.
I'll second.
Motion and properly seconded. Any discussion? No discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you all very much. He's so excited, he's silent.
He's speechless.
I have to mute his mic.
He's speechless. All righty, moving on to our state of emergency, Mr. Rush. You might as well park a chair because you're up there for a while.
So, good evening. We're here again talking about our state of emergency. Mr. Talbert's going to put our few slides that we have up here. We're going to try to keep it simple because obviously the agenda is full tonight. So, Virginia, as of 10 a.m. this morning, the metrics are as follows. 3 million, just over 3 million have been tested since the beginning. 210,787 positive. That's a increase of 6,150 since your report on Monday, and that we talked about in our meeting as well. Hospitalizations are up 263 since Monday. Deaths are up 90 since Monday statewide. Positivity rate today 7.1%, which is a 0.2% change to the negative. So if you have to try to find silver linings, anything that's going down we'll take. September the 6th, we saw 7.8%, just to kind of give you a reference in time. October the 12th, we were at our lowest at 4.5%. So today, we're back up to 7.1. We've been fluctuating 7.5, 7.4 on that 7-day moving average. So, yeah, certainly if we can see some negative numbers, even this small, that's a good thing for COVID. While we're still, that's good. While we're still talking about Virginia, surrounding states aren't doing as well as us right now. So don't know why that is, but certainly Maryland, North Carolina, places like that are starting to see a huge increase. Hopefully that doesn't transcend across state lines, but so far so good. Accomack County today, there are 21 additional cases than what we reported on Monday. 2 more hospitalizations, no more deaths since I reported to you on Monday. Northampton, just 2 more cases, no change in their hospitalization or death rates. So, Chincoteague, we're +2 since Monday, so we're 40 total cases since the beginning, and we've had 21 additional tests since Monday. For the last couple weeks, we've been seeing 1 to 2 positive cases every few days, and that's pretty consistent for what's going on right now. Of course, those +2 also go towards that +21 in Accomack County. So just to keep perspective on the entire thing. So moving forward, right now where are we at? So I just want to give you a quick brief background on our closed pod plan. We have 2 pod plans. One is a point of distribution where we have ice, tarps, water after a storm or an event that we run out here in the parking lot. That plan we won't discuss tonight, but we have what's called a closed pod plan, which is a point of distribution plan. Some years ago, we worked with the health department. We devised this plan. We have hit the next one if you would. You see some pictures here of our closed pod. We worked with the health department, came up with an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, to work with them in any public health emergency. Well, we're certainly in a public health emergency right now. What we were planning at the time, though, was, for an anthrax release, some type of bioterrorism, what needed to happen there to help protect us. So naturally, when we're looking for a way to move forward through COVID, this plan is sitting there, and with a lot of discussion that we've had since 7:30 this morning, this is going to be a plan moving forward, and I'll explain briefly. Each year we update our plan with our numbers. What numbers do we use? So this is a non-public plan. This is not something that we use for the public and distribution to the public. This is something we use for our employees and their household family members. Not grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, just the employee and their household family members. We also use it for our operationally active volunteer fire and EMS and their immediate household members. Not somebody that's been around, 70 years and so forth. Just our operationally active volunteers. So all of our employees, okay, their family members, immediate, our volunteer and fire and EMS, okay, and by employees, public works, police, all of our employees. And finally, you, okay, council. And the council, also your immediate family. So what we do, if you'll can you back up, hit backspace there a couple times? Just want to kind of go back. All right, that's good. So our closed pod plan, we use the center across the street. With the closed pod plan, what will happen is there's some type of public emergency. Health department will call me and go, Brian, something bad's happened. We've had some type of release. We need to hand out some type of medication. Most of the time, it's like doxycycline, something like that. They will come here with a bulk supply of medicine based on the numbers that we update annually, for new employees and deaths, births, so forth. They will bring the medications here. Our plan and our pod is ran by the employees. Our plan, I should be able to hand it to each one of you, but again, we'll use our employees. We hand them the plan and we go, I get this done by. It's up. There. Make sure that not a lot of medicine. It requires the head of household to go through the pod. They can get it for their wife, their children, whoever's living in their immediate family can go forward. So again, we have a very robust pod. You can see there we got a police officer managing that in our last exercise. Some of the public works employees filling out the forms. Now, granted, during COVID, this was before COVID, so that's why no one has a mask. So nobody get upset here that there's no mask. But this is essentially an employee-run exercise here, and or if it's a normal operation, to make it happen. Okay. You can move forward. So, like I said, non-public, all right. And what do we do with this? Why are we doing this? So again, we exercise with VDH annually when we update our numbers. And by that, myself, my county, or the county counterparts, we all meet somewhere on the shore and we go through just the basic exercise to make sure everything is still working the way we have it. Every 2 to 3 years, we will do a local exercise, which also counts for an exercise in the locality for the year. So, other than maybe Mr. Talbert knowing, some of you, usually I invite you, I think you remember the last one, I sent you an email a few days out, hey, come if you can. We will do a full-scale exercise. One, it gets the employees, oh yeah, I remember this, and it shows us if we have any deficiencies, where we can get better, where we can update our plan. So again, that medication distribution meets the public health emergency. And the big goal here, why this is done to just our employees and inside here is to maintain continuity of operations. So we want continuity of government, okay, and we want our continuity of operations. So in order to do that, when there is a major public health emergency, we don't want our employees calling out sick today to go stand in line at one of the distribution sites that are very efficiently run. Typically, we will run a local distribution site with the health center downtown when we do our exercise. So we'll do our exercise the day before, run it real time, and move into the public health center downtown the next day and actually get volunteers to come in and run it as patients. So it works really well. But again, we don't want our employees calling out, not to take little Susie or little Johnny to go get. We want you, here's your meds, take them home tonight, give them as directed. You're at work tomorrow morning. You're here doing what you need to do to maintain that continuity of government. Next slide, please. So, what does that mean for us now? Today, and Mr. McComb, you know, in his prayer tonight, hey, we need something. We need vaccination. We need something going forward. Well, God's starting to answer prayers. Today, I have been informed that the CDC and the Virginia Department of Health are projecting a phase 1 rollout of vaccinations by mid to late December. So, we're a month and a half out. Now, again, that's a timeline. They think it's a good timeline, but we all know how 2020 and COVID has been, so stay tuned. So in that, our first line healthcare providers are going to be first in line based on the phases, how they're going to phase this in. So our hospital staffs, our nursing home staffs, and our EMS staff. Those are going to be the first ones in line. So in our many discussions today, we were like, okay, how do we make this happen? What do we do? So forth. Because again, there's a lot of moving parts. Ours are a little smaller than some of the larger areas. But when we all work together, we make it happen. So, locally, we're going to use that closed pod format, of course, with all distancing guidelines. And we may even do a drive-through. So we may incorporate the medication dispensing, which is going to be a shot, a vaccination. And we might do a drive-through out here. We might do a drive-through through the fire station, something of that nature. This is in the initial phase. Sorry about this. It's going to be EMS only in the initial phase. But that's active EMS, and that's volunteers also. So any of our few active volunteers in EMS that we have are going to be first in line to receive the vaccination. No family members, okay, like in our normal closed pod, family members. No EMS family members will receive it. It's only going to be EMS employees and the active EMS volunteers. So again, no other eligible, including no EMS family, and no volunteer fire also. I just wanted to make that clear because I'm sure there's going to be some questions. But that is what the CDC has pressed out today. That's what the health department's working on. So again, a vaccination is out there. And again, with the timeline that they've projected, that's a month to a month and a half, we may actually start to see that on our front lines. So that's some encouraging news. So in summary, on our state of emergency, we're still at response and recovery together. We're all doing what we can do. Positivity rates is increased over last month, but steady since Monday. Again, I've said it and I'll say it again, there's increasing cases and they're likely to continue that way. Most fall and winter activities, I know we've been trying to work around that, are now canceled. We all know this, so most activities are now canceled with the new surges. Look, our local PPE supplies are steady. We're still running the call volume, but our supplies are steady. We're still able to maintain. So hopefully that ticks up. And with this new surge in cases, there's a lot of lessons learned that we learned from the first time that we did that, back in March, April, May, so forth. So by applying some of that, we're hoping we can get through this next surge a lot easier. And then again, the frontline healthcare phase 1 vaccination in the next month to a month and a half. So that's where we're at. Any questions? No?
Just one from me. If someone from here has COVID, they go to the hospital in Salisbury, and God forbid they pass, I've seen, is that death counted for Accomack County, or is it counted for Wicomico County?
It will go back to Accomack County, but what will happen is they report to a health department, to state health department, back to state health department, back to local health department. But yes, it will get counted in Accomack County. Now, do numbers get missed? I can't speak for that, but they are to be counted back to where the address of the individual is living.
Okay.
Anything else?
Moving on.
Good news.
Okay.
Yeah, moving on.
Thank you.
Moving on.
Thank you.
All right. So, you want to follow it on that?
Well, the next on the agenda is to consider EMS staffing proposals.
So, Fire department, again, had reached out questioning, why we weren't covering it as much as what we said we were gonna cover over this year. Of course, we've had a lot of changes over the year. The budget got modified. We had looked at adding 4 additional full-time EMS employees at the EMT level, and that just didn't work out for obvious reasons. So, with their letter they had sent to you, I believe it was the first meeting of the month, it came back up for discussion in budget personnel last week, and we met to discuss it. So, we can move forward. So let me explain the situation briefly for those of you that weren't in here during that time. So right now, we're having a hard time meeting the demands of the EMS responses. Our basic response level is going to be 2 folks, meaning 1 ambulance hits the street every day, 24 hours a day. No questions asked. Whatever we have to do, we make 1 ambulance hit the street. But there have been quite some times that 2nd ambulance was not able to get out on the street for various reasons that I've put up here before. So, again, volunteer response is real low right now, and I don't see that changing, and here's why. COVID, number 1, all right? Myself, being a career in this, I'm not crazy about going out to some of these places with the COVID and riding in a small closed-in area to a hospital and so forth, but certainly the volunteers, I can understand that wholeheartedly. Age, our volunteers have gotten pretty much consistently older, and we're not getting any new folks. The times, I know that I can see them, I can feel them glaring at me. The younger folks, new folks, we're not getting them in. Times have changed. It requires more folks to be working more, in jobs, and there's other things to do now. Unlike when, most of us were younger, and that was the thing to do. It's not there, and again, that's that lack of interest. And it's not just a local problem. I can't overemphasize that. I can't overstate it. This is not, this is a Chincoteague problem, they're bad. No, this is a nationwide problem right now that people just don't volunteer. And think of any of the volunteer organizations that you are familiar with, and it's usually that same handful, subset of people, might be a core group of 6 or 7. They do it all, right? And that's, again, that's just volunteerism now, unfortunately. So then we turn to staffing shortages. We have 1 employee that has been injured on the job since June and is still not cleared to come back to work. So that has hurt us. We had another employee who had surgery and has been on medical leave, and general employee leave, vacations and so forth, which again I brought out to budget personnel. There was a period of time that we actually canceled all leave because we just could not meet the demands. So all leave had been canceled, but we're not back there yet. We're prepared to go there if we have to, but I really would like to stay away from it if we can. And then quarantine. At any given time, especially in the summer months, we had 1 or 2 part-timers that were quarantined at any given time because, again, they were exposed at other areas, their other jobs. And we've had a couple full-time folks quarantined along the way. So, what did that do to our staffing? Well, normal staffing totals, we have 8 full-time employees, not counting myself. I'm the 9th. Currently, we only have 6 due to leave. So we run 4 shifts, 2 people a shift for that main minimum staffing. So we were actually out an entire shift. So I was having to pull 2 part-timers or myself to make that minimum staffing. Again, we have 11 part-timers on roll. So, again, those 2 things came together and has created the perfect storm. Again, 2020. So, like I said, minimum staffing of only 2, and we're doing that right now about 40 to 55% of the time. All right, the rest of the time we're able to cover those positions, and I'll go into a little bit more how that coverage works. So during that time, 40 to 55%, and I'm trying to space this over some months, not just right here and now, because the picture is much more bleak if you get your blinders on and look at it. So I'd like us all just to look at the big picture to be more realistic. No local second ambulance response in that 40 to 55% of the time, and we're looking at a 12 to 25 minute mutual aid response, meaning a mutual aid ambulance coming in to help and handle that second call. So, again, CVFC, Brian, why is this happening? Why is the ambulance sitting in the station? Why are we seeing Saxis, Greenbackville, Oak Hall, Bloxham, so forth? So, this is why, back to the perfect storm. So CVFC sent a letter to you folks concerning the problem. Budget and personnel, when we met last week, their directive was to develop a plan. We want you to develop a plan. We want Mr. Talbert, manager, CVFC, and myself, sit down, you guys come up with a plan, try to solve this problem. So when we set our goals and objectives for our new plan, we wanted it to meet acceptable risks. And I did put this out here to those of you in budget and personnel. Mr. West described it best way back when we were doing budget for last year before we got to COVID. And it's an insurance policy. We have risk. The risk is people get sick, people have accidents, people can die. We know this is going to happen, and there's nothing that we can do. We can never assume 100% of that risk. That you can't do that. So the EMS service becomes insurance. All right, how much insurance are we willing to put to mitigate the risk? And that's what I throw out there. What does the public expect for mitigation? What do you as the elected officials expect for mitigation? What does the fire company expect for the mitigations? And that's where we have to work from. So our plan must meet acceptable risk. It needs to be measurable. How can we measure our success of a new plan to make sure we're doing it right? And most importantly, I shouldn't say most importantly, but certainly right there with risk, we need to be fiscally responsible when we do it. That's just paramount right now with everything that's going on. So what do we do currently? Currently, I'll give you just a real quick rundown. We started with 2 people Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. Volunteerism was great back then. Just during the day in the early 90s, folks couldn't get away from work. Nighttime, weekends, you name it, they were on it all the time. We moved over the years to 2 of us during the week, then we went to 1 person 24. We had a midnight shift one time because we was having a problem getting out between midnight and 8. We did a couple variations, and then we finally went to 1 person 24 back in 2007, and over time we built up to the 2nd person because, again, volunteerism was getting slow. We stayed at 2 people 24 for some time because it worked. What happened was volunteers, the drivers, were able to come out. 1 driver could go with 1 employee, 1 driver could go with another. Both ambulances were on the street. That worked for quite some time. It did good. And then we started to have problems during the summer. Again, we are traditionally a tourist town. Call volume increased. The volunteers were just not able to keep up with as many calls, so we started adding some 8-hour shifts here of a 3rd person and so forth, and then carnival, and unfortunately volunteerism continued to go down. So a few years back, we went to what I call a 3rd. When you hear me say a 3rd, it's because we have 2 people on 24 hours a day. We added a 3rd. That 3rd shift was typically 8A to 8P. Now, during carnival, we would modify that, 11A to 11P. If we had other special events going on, we may have to do 2 that day. So we might do a 6A to 6P and 11A to 11P, like during Pony Pen and things like that, to make it work. And again, it worked. It's been working. It's been a good system. It's been a good partnership. So we use part-time individuals to backfill open full-time positions. So if somebody's sick, somebody calls out, somebody schedules vacation, we use a part-timer to go into that position. That is our main goal, to use that part-time, as well as making up that 3rd. The director, myself, backfills full-time positions as well. So if I can't get a part-time provider to backfill, then it's me. It falls on me. Figure it out, do the best we can. And then last resort, and I do mean last resort, we use full-time to backfill the position if need be. This is not like your typical, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 job where if somebody calls out sick, and they call out sick, and, office staff or whatever works a little harder that day, but, you know, everything works out and comes back to normal. We can't do that. We have to meet that minimum staffing. That's it. So this year, after the additional full-time had been scrapped from the budget, which, again, was the responsible thing to do, we had budgeted 5,390 part-time hours. Now, how do those part-time hours, how do we come up with that? Well, the third shift was roughly 300 days a year. We budgeted that third shift. Full-time leave, so use an equation to go, all right, this person has this much leave, this person has this much to come up. Any unscheduled overtime is built into that, so if they're here on shift and they're scheduled to get off 8 p, for example, or if they're working for a full-timer and they're supposed to get off at 8 a the next morning and a call comes out at 7:15, you know, maybe 7, usually shift trades are in pretty early, so that doesn't happen, but you get a call 7 or a little before, then we all know how long it takes to get to a hospital from there, so we have a little bit of unscheduled overtime. And then holidays. We traditionally didn't work on, you know, so many holidays, but some of the busier holidays, July 4th, Memorial Day, Labor Day, things like that, so we had to do the holiday pay. So, the burning question, what can we do? All right, well, we were charged with coming up with a plan. So, the easy thing here, and you'll see momentarily, you know, obviously, when you throw money at a plan, it may work, it may not. I don't think that's the responsible thing to do. And in our meeting, Mr. Talbert and myself, we really, you know, talked about this for many hours before, and then Mr. Jeffries, Mr. Reed, and Mr. Thornton attended the meeting with Mr. Talbert and myself, and we really, you know, we discussed what we're going to do. So we're going to continue with the 2 full-time, 24 hours. That's no change there. So I'm getting ready to say that our plan says we're going to have 1 part-timer, not 12 hours, but 24 hours in that third position. However, that's going to be 180 days from December 1st out to June 30th, which is the remainder of the FY21 budget. That is 85% of the total days. All right, that's 85% of that time period. It's 212 days is what the actual, but again, looking at the statistics, looking at the times of days, there are some days that overnight calls just don't happen. So guess what? We're going to use that to our advantage and say, we hope that's not going to happen. You know, we're not going to have a call. This is what the statistics tell us. So we're going to have minimum scheduling and staffing at that time. But there are days where we know it's more. So the first thing you're going to say is, well, you're asking for more hours. And the problem is we have hours now we can't cover. We'll get there. So the part-time will continue to backfill those full-time positions as necessary, just like I discussed. I plan on hiring an additional 3 to 7 part-time employees. The full-timers, okay, if we have to, and I'm talking, this is statistics say, we're going to have a call at 2:20 a.m. this day, every day, it just happens. Then I can't get anybody, I'm going to use a full-timer to backfill that spot. And in 12 to 20, no more than 24 hours a month. The full-timers have a short check cycle where their overtime is not there. So if I schedule them on their short check cycle, it's definitely going to be to the good. So from December 1st through the remainder, so June 30th, I'm asking for an additional 5,291 hours. All right, from that point. So if you go back a slide, Mr. Robert, one more. So you can see for the entire year, initially budgeted was 5,390. Well, now it's going to take us an additional 5,200 and I should know this as many times as I've seen it, but I just want to say it right. When you know it now. 5,291 additional hours. And again, those additional hours are spread the same way. The third shift, which changes from that 12-hour to 24, full-time leave, unscheduled overtime, and holiday. The new staffing totals then, again, we have 8 full-time. After December 3rd, I will be back at 7. The employees informed me that the doctor is going to clear them with their physical and everything to come back to work. So that's still going to leave us one position that we're going to have to cover. So what I would like to do is currently we have 11 part-timers, as you saw in the earlier slide. I want to go to 15 part-timers. I think we can do it with 15 part-timers. But I want to build in, again, this is measurable, so we can see if it's working, but I also want to build in a cushion for us just in case. So the intention is to interview, and when we do our interview, we're going to have a list of 7. So we're going to pick the best of the best 4 out of that 7. But we're going to maintain the 3 on that list so that if we move 2 months into this and man, I just can't get enough people to work, this shift's being, uncovered and so forth, I can call them up and go, look, this is, Brian Town of Chincoteague, you're on our list, if, you still want to be there, and we would like to offer you an employment, today, whenever you can start. So that's the little cushion I want to build in there. So that will be our new staffing plan. It doesn't add any more full-time positions. All right, it uses part-time, and I'll explain a little bit more as we move forward, just to make sure we're clear. So currently in the FY21 part-time expense in our budget, with salary and Social Security, we're looking at $102,188 is what was budgeted for this year. So far, through November the 12th, we've expended 46% of that. And you go, whoa, hold on a minute. That's right. We should only be at about 37% right now, but we've expended 46. But what I need you to understand is there's been a lot of full-time outages that I've had to move and bring those part-timers in and work them. And again, that's what's kept the gap in that 3rd position. So again, we're at 46% for the year, which is almost $47,000. So on the full-time side of the house, through November 12th, if you look at the budget analysis, we're right around 30% under. You go, what, under? How are you under? Well, 30% of our salaries, EMS salaries, were under. 22% of our overtime were under. And with total salaries, overtime, and any benefits that the full-time employees are entitled to, we're actually only running about 28% right now. And we should be, again, at 37%. So we're 9% to the good. So how did we get 9% to the good? Did we screw up our budget? No, we didn't. One employee's on workman's comp. So guess what? Yeah, we're paying a workman's comp premium every year, so I guess we could go in there and really dig in the weeds to pull that out, but we're not paying a salary to that employee right now. The other employee has been on leave without pay for a period of time because they only had so much leave to cover them. They went to leave without pay. They are now in the sick leave bank because they've met the time period to actually get in that sick leave bank. So again, that's where we're at. And the 3rd shift is just not being filled. That goes back to that 45-50% range that I was showing you earlier. So that's how we came up here at November the 12th, roughly 9% to the good. So our part-time adjustment, what we want to do to make this plan work is, again, in our original budget for the year, $102,188, salary, Social Security. That's all it costs us for part-timers. And uniforms, all right? Every part-timer gets, some shirt, pants, just the basic uniform. So we're looking at about $1,900 for new hires. That may be just a little high, but I'd rather be on the high side than miss the number altogether. And then with that, you're looking at now for the rest of the year, $102,210 to make this plan work. However, once we continue to look at our adjustment, we have $55,220 remaining under our current budget that we have left out of that initial $102,000 there that we had left. So we still have that to work with, $55,220 of that. We're $31,000 under projected expenses in total current EMS salaries. So that 9% that I spoke of equates to $31,000, which gives us $85,220 that we still have that we can apply towards the 102,210, which in the final number, which we're all looking for, brings us to a $16,990 deficit from what has been budgeted in FY21. Fire company was, once I explained this, and again, I saw some of you look like, you want more hours? You don't have enough people now. This, by hiring these extra full-time, we can get more, at this time, more bang for our buck. It's measurable. We can see if it's working. We'll know going forward come the new budget year how it's working. And by building that little bit of cushion, hey, if 4 aren't enough, we'll hire more. Because again, our part-timers, they get nothing except the uniform and when they're working. So, when we're sleeping, they're not eating, we're not eating. So, I think this is the most fiscally responsible way to do it. Is it perfect? By no means. I do believe it'll work, but I also believe that we can adjust as necessary to make it work. I'll entertain questions.
You say it all over again.
From the start.
I don't know that you could have worked it any better. I tell you, that's a lot of information packed in there, and a lot of numbers. And obviously, it's
And don't believe my numbers. Ask Mr. Tolbert, because again, we spent a lot of time and a lot of pencils.
Well, I
maybe we
know.
need to subtract out a few pencils from that. I don't know, but it definitely, it's not been taken lightly. And then once we came up with our plan, again, we brought the fire company in and said, is this acceptable to you? And they did concur that it was acceptable. Then we went back to the drawing board to iron out the final numbers for you all.
In the next budget, they would probably have to add that 55,000 back in plus the 16, wouldn't you?
Well, yeah, in the next budget.
Right,
we
you
would have to add-
understand what I'm saying. I mean,
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. It's a great number, but in the next budget, we have to add the
Absolutely.
55 back in. But that's still not the end of the world. It's still way cheaper than the full-time.
And right now, I'm looking to June 30th is where I'm looking at. And certainly with the measure here being it is able to be measured, we're going to look at this 2 to 4 weeks at a time, making sure we're hitting our mark. And if we're not hitting our mark, why are we not hitting our mark? But I am confident that this will hit our mark.
We
Now,
got good local people that work for the county that come, that's what I mean, the people that love the Chincoteague, live here. We can't beat it.
I see no reason that I will not be able to hire part-time positions.
This-
I see zero reason that will not happen. It'll take me a little longer because we'll have to go through the process with these folks and, there's background checks and so forth that even though they're working by state law, we have to go through. But we'll make it happen. And in the meantime, Mr. Talbert and I had discussed, some of our part-timers that are coming here 12 hours a day, by offering, hey, you can come here for a full 24, it might even entice them more to come here. Because again, it doesn't change the overall number, and that number is using an average. Certainly, not all of our part-timers make the same amount. So we used an average. And again, that's going to be my responsibility to sit there and make sure we're hitting our average as we go.
So in the future, it's going to cost about 72,000 in the future to hit, but using these same part-timers, but it's still, like you say, it's still going to be way cheaper.
It would be a full-time employee, because we worked it out, benefits, everything. A full-time EMT, like I originally, we had asked for in the original budget way back when, a full-time EMT was going to cost us $55,000
Per.
change. Per.
Hey, Arthur,
Yes, sir.
I'll make a motion, we go with staff recommendation.
second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Paying our insurance bill. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Brian. Have fun.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Job well done, Brian.
Thank you.
We'd also like to thank those 2 long-time volunteers in the back. There's not enough thank yous for the trips. There's just not enough thank yous.
And the fire company thanks you all tonight for, going on the road. Have a good one.
What we're doing is very minimal compared to what the fire company does. All righty, moving on. CARES Act, Mr. Talbert.
Yes, sir. A couple of new wrinkles for CARES Act. As you know, we've been looking at a replacement for our dispatch system. Chief Robbie and I have, we had a meeting a few days ago and took a presentation on the online system. Chief Fisher likes it. His dispatchers like it. It is different in that it is light on the in-house equipment and more heavy on the cloud service, which we've all seen a lot of things going to in cloud. Everybody says they think this is the wave of the future. This is a company who has several installations, none apparently on the East Coast. It's a Canadian company. They have a few installations on the West Coast, I think a few in the Midwest. It's a minimal investment in equipment. Since this equipment can be used from any internet connection, and it now allows us to dispatch anywhere we have an internet connection, which I think would be qualifying for CARES Act money. The equipment itself and the installation of that equipment is just under $20,000, as opposed to the 130 or so we were looking at for equipment in the in-house based solution. Also being mindful that the county both counties actually are currently reviewing their 911 systems and plan in the not too distant future to completely rehab those systems. We think that since this is a minimal investment in in-house equipment and then a yearly fee to maintain the system, we can cancel it at any time. Should things not be compatible a couple years down the road when we have to upgrade to match the county system, we can just say, heck, thank you guys, we don't need it anymore, we'll keep the computers, you keep your service. I might also say the monthly fee is not insignificant. The monthly fee for this is about $1,000 a month. It covers all updates and maintenance to the system, unless we order something new. If you remember, just last year, the dispatch department here obtained a revenue, and that's when we started dispatching for the park service at the base. I'm sorry, at the beach. Fish and Wildlife. Okay, Fish and Wildlife. Coincidentally, we charge him $1,000 a month.
Convenient.
Now, not doing any smoke and mirrors things here, that was in the budget for this year. So those revenues did hit the budget for this fiscal year. It won't be a new revenue for next year. However, we'll have to redirect some things, but I like things when they come out. You take it and give it to you. I'm out nothing, and I still get the service. That's kind of the way I'm looking at this. We'd like to go ahead and, as I said, Chief Fisher likes it, his dispatchers like it. We'd like to go ahead and look at this service and install it, use the CARES Act money to buy the equipment. They are also, because they want a presence on the East Coast here, they're going to give us the first 3 months for free. If the system doesn't pan out, if we end up saying, oh, this is total trash, we don't like it, we've made a deal where we can put all that stuff back in the box and send it back, and we haven't paid them anything and don't intend to pay them anything. So we've got 3 months to like it or not, and they even mentioned that if they don't happen to get it up and running to suit us in those 3 months, they'll extend it to 4 or 5. So we'd like to go ahead and do that. And there's another wrinkle in the CARES Act. I had a communication from a citizen who has a home occupation. They did write a letter. It was addressed to myself and the mayor. I did not get back to that citizen in a timely fashion. However, she did come to see me a few days ago and was saying that her business could have benefited from a CARES Act grant, but she was unaware of it. If you remember the first round, home occupations did not qualify, and she did apply for the first round. She did not see the advertisement for the second round. The way we advertised it the second time was exactly like we did it the first time. We did it on Facebook, we did it on our website, and we put ads in the newspaper. The office staff talked it up. I know you as the council members talked it up. We gave away 53 grants the first time and 35 grants the second time, so it obviously was out there. This business owner also mentioned that there were a few other businesses that she thought that did not know about it as well, and she gave me the names of those businesses because I asked. So I told her we're going to a meeting Thursday night, and if the council wants to open this up and grant a few more businesses grants, I'll be glad to do that. We do have the money to do that. Right now, the balance, the unallocated balance is about almost $60,000. We do intend to buy the $20,000 worth of dispatch equipment, so that would come out of that, leaving you about $30,000. We also wanted to buy at least one of the message boards that we'd like to replace. Our existing ones becoming unrepairable. So we think we can squeeze those items in depending on how many businesses want to come back and ask for a grant. We could limit it to a certain number. We could just open it up and see what happens. It's at your discretion. I will say also that this business owner that came and talked to me said that she was counting on Facebook and Mr. Zuckerberg let her down. And that she didn't think it got advertised on Facebook, and the chamber was unaware of it. I did talk to the chamber, and they did not see our Facebook advertisement, although we have some people in the office who did see it, so.
It was out there.
I'm sorry?
It was out there.
It was out there.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Sure.
I don't want to deny any business anything. It's been, hit hard, but every business on here had the same opportunity to apply for these. In fact, I even myself went out and encouraged businesses to apply. I feel like the time is come and going. It was advertised very heavily through print, media, Facebook, things like that. My own personal opinion now is that ship has sailed, and we've got other business to take care of with the town with this CARES Act money. I think that we have been very generous to our business community through the CARES Act funding, and everyone had the same opportunity to apply at the same times. With that being said, I would rather go ahead and take what's left of this money, not knowing what's coming down the road, and purchase what we've got to have for police department and such. That's just my opinion on that.
Anyone else? Okay, I think you got your answer on that one.
That does the CARES Act for me.
All righty.
So Mike, one quick question on the dispatch. When will we look to implement that?
We will call tomorrow and write those folks a purchase order for the equipment. And of course, the way this works with CARES is we're going to put out the initial outlay. They will reimburse us. I will probably talk to the county as well, although they haven't. They've given us guidance all along the way with what qualifies. They've stopped short of saying yes, this qualifies, no, that doesn't. But I'll put some feelers out there just to make sure I'm not totally barking up the wrong tree. But I do feel like it's a emergency services, so to speak, function, and it allows us to do this basically work from home, which is work from home is covered under CARES Act. So I feel very good about it being covered and us being reimbursed for the equipment.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Need a motion?
Yeah, I guess so, to move forward with purchasing the equipment for the police department.
So move.
Second?
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
All righty. Item 11 is to consider employee raises, and this has to do with our Budget and Personnel Committee, so I'm gonna turn that over to Vice Mayor Bott.
Yeah, the Budget and Personnel met on November the 10th and discussed several options that Mike had brought forth regarding the salary increases for the employees. After much debate, I'm going to forward the recommendation of the Budget and Personnel in the form of a motion that we implement. It's number 8, but it's the full raise delay to the town council in a form of a motion. And that includes, as you see on the screen, Mike's put it up on the screen for us if you want to look up it on the screen. That is cost $59,285, cost per pay period $2,329. There is a delay factor of $19,684. This begins the full raise with pay period 10 and delay retroactive option until May. And then at that time, we will look at the finances again and decide whether we go with the retroactive portion. And I'm submitting that in the form of a motion.
Do I hear a second to that motion?
Second.
Motion and second. Is there any discussion?
So that full delayed rate is 2 or 2.5?
That's the full, yeah, we went with the full 2.5.
2.5, right, okay.
And
And then we're
then-
gonna go, and like I said, the money's there.
Right in May.
We're gonna go back with the full.
That's the 19,684.
The money, Lord be willing, will be there. So, I mean, I know we have employees listening, and they do, and they have worked through this pandemic. And I do think the money's gonna be there, and I think they're gonna get their full 2.5. Is that, everybody?
If I could clarify one thing, the budget is calculated every year, and the increase in salary for our employees is assumed at 2.5%. But the raises are merit-based.
Right.
There'll be some a little more, some a little less.
But it's not gonna be any different. I'm saying that the 2.5 is still gonna be there. It's gonna be merit-based. But
It'll be
we're not gonna be
merit-based.
trying to cut them out of that 2.5 merit-based increase, is what I'm trying to say.
We're not gonna take anything away. I mean, there might be an employee with a 2%, there might be
Sure.
another one with a 3 or
3,
4.
and I get that, but I'm saying is,
Yeah, but no, we are not going to reduce their planned raise, any amount with this option.
and what I'm saying, I don't see, we've been blessed, past blessed.
Just, go ahead.
No, go ahead. But I think we're
No,
going,
and I agree. I mean, it's great to be hopeful and everything, but we don't want to overpromise or overstate. You know, we may be in a position when May comes, you know, if there is a resurgence like they're talking, that you may not be able to. So
oh, sure.
we want to be hopeful. We just don't want to, we don't want to
They
overstate.
understand that too.
Well,
But
just-
I'm saying, but the good Lord be willing, if the money is there, we're gonna, fulfill what we budgeted for.
Exactly, and which is, the entire reason that this wasn't done in July, as it should have been, is because we asked for some more time to see what our revenues were going to be.
Right.
Basically, this gives gives everybody their raise, starting with pay period 10, and still allows us some time to review the retroactive part of it. And hopefully, everything goes along
Exactly, and
fine,
I'm thinking that, I mean, we've
and
been,
we're able to do that in May.
All right, we have a motion that's been properly seconded. Any further discussion? I'll entertain a vote. All those by aye.
all right.
Aye.
I'm sorry.
I said it different.
Hey, you
I
swapped
did
up
it
on us.
different. I was falling back on my A and PDC stuff. Because I was thinking this is extracurricular, but we had an A and PDC meeting the other night, and the counties, I know Northampton is still don't have their selves together on what they're gonna do for their employees. They're thinking about giving them a one-time bonus and calling it a day. That way they're not increasing anybody's pay. Same thing with Accomack. They're just gonna bonus it out, tell them to have a good day and keep working.
Right, but we're a tourism-based,
Right.
and we've been blessed with tourism this year.
And
You know what I'm saying? We've been blessed
we
with
wanna
tourism,
keep our
which-
workers.
Which you'll, and they've been part of it, keeping the
Yeah.
town ready up and going for them.
All righty, so, moving on to item 12 is to review our strategic financial plan. body's here for, right?
And
Our presentation.
just as a matter of introduction here, these gentlemen are from VML Vaco Financial. This is Mr. Robert Lattenberg, and he'll be going through the plan that they're developing for us for the long-term strategic goals of the tank.
That's some hard copies of, Sir?
Thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for having us here. As the town manager said, I'm Robert Lauderberg. This is Taylor Bryant from our staff as well. We'll both be talking to you tonight about the financial policies that we've been working on. We're going to queue up a presentation. I've got a few charts I think you'll find of interest as we go through this. You have in front of you the draft financial policies with some comments that we've included. So these are our recommendations to the town for the set of financial policies. The purpose of the meeting tonight is for us to present these to you so you know what's in the policies, and you'll have an opportunity, of course, to read them in more detail. We're looking for input from the town council either tonight or in the days ahead, so we can finalize the document and provide it to you. So I'll begin telling you a little bit about VML Vaco. If you're not familiar with our program, VML Vaco Finance is a service of the Virginia Municipal League and the Virginia Association of Counties. We were founded in 2003. We're a nonprofit corporation. We provide a number of services to local government. Municipal advisory is one of our most important services. That's what the financial policies come under. And we also help localities in financing projects. We've financed over $1.1 billion in projects. We have investment management, 2 investment management programs with assets over $3 billion currently. And we provide accounting services for local governments. We're also the administrator of the Virginia Government Finance Officers Association. So this is a list of the localities and authorities that have used our program since we started. And we're so glad tonight to be able to add Chincoteague to our list of clients. We're the most widely used financial services program in Virginia. So tonight we're representing VML Vaco Finance as a municipal advisor. So let me just say a word or two about that. VML Vaco is registered as a municipal advisor with the Securities and Exchange Commission and the Municipal Securities Rulemaking Board. It's now a requirement that any local government that receives advice from a third party on finance topics has to be registered as a municipal advisor. And what this entails is a code of conduct. One of the important assets of this is that we have a fiduciary duty to you. So our duty is to act in your best interest, not in our own. And secondly, we have professional qualification standards. So each of the members of our staff who advise local governments have taken and passed the Series 50 examination. Our focus at VML Vaco Finance is to provide municipal advisory services to mid-size and smaller localities where we think there's the greatest need. Now, the financial policies that you all have asked us to prepare, these have a number of purposes. And basically, these policies establish rules for financial management. And these will be a guide when they're adopted by the council. These will serve as a guide to you as council members and also to your staff. There's a number of objectives here. We're trying to codify major policies in all of the key financial areas. Now tonight, as we go through them, in the interest of time, we're not going to go through every single one. You'll have an opportunity to to read that. And most of those things, we think the town is already doing. In fact, when we look at Chincoteague, and part of our analysis here in preparing the policies is to look at you as a town and how you're performing and which of these things you may already be doing. And I have to say we're very impressed with Chincoteague. We think you are a very well managed town from a financial standpoint with a lot to take credit for. Now tonight we're going to focus on 3 areas. One is your commitment to conservatively manage revenue. And we think this is particularly important right now because every locality in Virginia and across the country is facing uncertain times with this crazy COVID stuff and the impact that that's having on your revenues, the uncertainty that that creates, and so forth. One thing we thought would be of interest to you and was important to our analysis was to look at Chincoteague. We looked at some revenue and expense trends here, and we compared them to some peer localities in this part of the state that I think you'll find interesting. And then also, 2 other areas I want to focus on in particular is a policy around the use of debt. Chincoteague doesn't have a lot of debt. We're not advocating that you take on debt, but we do think it's important to have a policy so that if and when the time comes, and you have debt, but if you issue additional debt, that you are looking at that in terms of a broad policy. And we think that's just good conservative financial management. So we're going to make a recommendation for a policy on debt. And then also we have a recommendation. This is something that Mr. Tolbert thought was very important that we address, is setting minimum reserve thresholds, minimum fund balances for the town. You have considerable fund balances. They're impressive. And I think it's a very good idea to have a policy around that so that you know what part of those fund balances, if any, may be available to spend and how much you want to preserve as part of an institutionalized policy. So those are all things that we're going to be talking about this evening. So on the next one, I just want to say one thing to distinguish between policies and procedures. What we're talking about tonight are policies. These are basically guiding principles for your financial management. Procedures are the next level beyond this. Procedures are step-by-step descriptions of the tasks that you would do to implement all these policies. A lot of these things you're already doing. They may not be codified or written down, but you're probably already doing a lot of these things. But that's would be a responsibility, I think, for you and the staff to think through procedures where they may be needed. So we're going to be talking at a higher level, sort of at a high level tonight about the policies and not so much the procedures. So in the handout with the draft policies, all of these areas are covered. We'll touch on each of them, but we're not going to spend a lot of time on all of those. Like I said, there's 3 areas that we will focus a little bit more on. The first 4, I'm going to ask Taylor Bryant. Taylor is a municipal advisor on our staff, and he's been working on the first 4 policy areas, so he's going to present those to you, and then I'll come back and cover the last 4.
Thank you for having me. I'll keep it brief. I know you have a busy agenda tonight. But in terms of internal controls and accounting and financial reporting, kind of wanted to just touch on a couple items there. I'll combine them mostly. In terms of internal controls, it's very important for the town to identify the biggest risks that it faces. And in identifying them, it wants to develop procedures to mitigate and address those risks. A common way to do that would be a system of dual controls, and that involves things such as an individual authorizing checks should also not be cutting those checks. simple systems like that to help mitigate any sort of risk that could arise from a non-dual control system. In terms of accounting and financial reporting, we want to ensure that all of the standards and principles that the town is employing are consistent with GAAP, and also that a public accounting firm is conducting the audit at the end of each year. That's mostly, kind of the high-level points for the accounting, internal, and then we can move to revenue management. In terms of the general fund, this is an area that we want to really drill down in on in terms of a diverse and stable revenue structure. We want to ensure that the town, to avoid any shortfalls in revenue in a short year, has a very diverse stream of revenues. With that, we can. And so the first area we take a look at is the trends of the general fund revenue. And you can see, generally, it's trending. So to outline this too, in dark is the revenues, and then in the lighter color are expenses. And you can see consistently revenues have been exceeding expenses, which is always a good trend to see. And then you'll see in 2020 that there is a slight uptick in expenses over revenues. That's not telling the full picture there. To note, that's unaudited cash flow, so it's a non-accrual based report that we looked at. And we're also facing significant financial headwinds right now in terms of collecting revenues. We can go to the next. If you look at this, it's the same graph, but there's an adjustment to 2020 to exclude a one-time capital expense. When we're reviewing the 2020 cash flow statement, we noted it's a $598,000 purchase for a building in November. We excluded that because the main goal of this chart is to show that revenues are covering recurring expenses. Because you can always cut out non-recurring expenses. In terms of a building purchase, that can be delayed to the next year until revenues stabilize. So the good from this chart is that the town is doing a very good job covering its recurring revenues. And in terms of looking at the revenues, we took it a step further because we wanted to see the composition and how diverse each revenue stream was. And so on the next slide, we take a look at the composition of the revenue. And so this is all the revenues over 17, 18, and 19. These were the 3 audited financial years we looked at. And it breaks it out between every general fund revenue. As you can see, other local taxes are a majority of the revenues. There's good support from the Commonwealth as well as general property taxes. And there's not one area that is, technically overwhelming or too much of revenues where it would be, necessarily a backbreaker if it were cut out. So we like to see that to start with. And we can move on to the next one. We took a little bit deeper look into the tax revenue because that's obviously the largest portion of the town's revenue. And looking at this, we see very, very good diversity here. There's, as we would expect in a town that is dependent on tourism and sort of travel-related revenue streams, we see a large amount of the revenues coming from transient occupancy tax as well as meals taxes. And that is a great thing. Many localities in Virginia would love to have this. But one thing in assembling your policies you want to be careful about is that this is a very obviously revenue stream that's affected by financial downturns as well as natural disasters, as we're seeing in 2020. To that end, something like a real estate tax is generally more reliable. But in assessing that, it's a good picture. It's it's not one area that is covering entirely too much, and it's generally a fairly resilient revenue stream. And with that, we can go on to the next one. And so looking at this, we thought it was important to compare Chincoteague to peer localities. And assembling this list, it was somewhat difficult because, as you know, Chincoteague is a very unique locality in Virginia. But in looking at this, we took Cape Charles, as it is a locality here on the eastern shore. It's slightly smaller, just over 1,000 residents. Colonial Beach, we reach across to the northern neck. These are all water-based localities in Virginia, so they have somewhat similar economies, And also the availability of their financials is vital too. You know, some of these, we've done business with all of the other ones here, so it was very easy to do that. And so that's how we built the peer group that we judged upon. And if we can go to the next slide. And so what we looked at is the revenue diversity as compared to Cape Charles, Colonial Beach, Kilmarnock, Tappahannock, and Warsaw. And if you'll see, many other localities are very heavily based, especially Cape Charles and Colonial Beach, in their revenue, their real estate taxes. And as we said before, as we said before, all these localities would love to have Chincoteague's, transient occupancy tax or those sorts of revenues. And if you look, Chincoteague is technically much more diverse than all these other localities without the dependency on real estate tax, which is great to see. But like we said before, one factor in determining policies is that the meals tax and the transient occupancy tax are very vulnerable to cyclical changes. So just be mindful of that, and we have some suggestions to help mitigate that potential risk. And then if we can just come back to the policies. We also took a look at the town's enterprise funds, which we've classified the harbor fund and the water fund as enterprise funds. We see these as more business type activities. Enterprise funds should be run on where they cover by their revenues, cover their expenses. And if we can go on to the next chart here, we took a look at the water fund's revenue versus expenses. Dark is revenue, light are expenses. And generally it is. It's covering the goals that the policy lays out, where it is a self-supporting enterprise. There was a little uptick in 2020, but if we can go on to the next slide, we'll also see that we looked through and saw there was a one-time expense. And I believe that was associated with painting a water tank. And so if we look back at this, it shows that again, the recurring revenues are covering the recurring expenses. It's self-supporting, which is what we want to see with all of this. We will say that in looking at all of these, we got to ensure that the rates are appropriate, and they appear to be, but it should be, every year they should be assessed and, level with expenses. And we can move on to the next slide where we look at the Harbor Fund. The Harbor Fund, in our brief analysis, appeared to be a little bit less self-supporting. In conversation with town management, we did hear that there are some internal funds that don't show in the audit that are used for transfers. So it's not necessarily supported by the general fund, but there are some, revenues don't necessarily match expenses as well. And in the exception of 2020, it looked like the management did an exceptional job of covering all expenses in a significant headwind. And then, in just wrapping up, I was going to take a look at the budget management, just highlight a couple quick items there. One highlighting item is that we want to ensure, as we've been stressing, non-recurring expenses should be covered with non-recurring revenues. That's a matching principle, and it starts with identifying all the non-recurring expenses. Oftentimes that's a judgment by council and the town manager to truly identify which expenses are non-recurring. So that is up to council and the town manager. And then lastly, the budget must be consistently reviewed and monitored throughout the year. If in any fiscal year it appears like a deficit is likely, then any steps need to be addressed to first take and reduce expenses. And with that, I'll leave it to Bob to take the next sections. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, we'll cover management of fixed assets next. And there's several things that we've listed here as recommended policies. Our major recommendation in this section is that the town establish a 5-year capital improvement plan. This is something that I don't believe the town is doing right now, but this is so important because if you plan your capital assets, your improvements, replacements, new items, and so forth, it gives you a multi-year planning perspective. It allows you also to budget for multiple years to smooth out those expenses. So you don't have something that hits you in the face and it's got to be addressed all at one time. So that's a very important thing. That's our most important recommendation in that section. And one other thing about this, when you do a capital plan, and we're going to be looking at the fund balance policy later, the question comes up, well, if we have a surplus this year, what do we do with that surplus? We just add it to the fund balance? Or can we designate it for something else? And what many localities do is they'll designate that surplus for capital projects. So you can have a capital plan, a fund to finance the capital plan, and then a way to put surpluses into that fund to cover capital projects. This gives you a lot of flexibility and a lot of control over planning and funding these capital projects. The next section in the policy, cash management and investments. And I'll boil everything down to this major recommendation. We think the town should look at its funds in 3 different categories. Daily cash being one of those, the cash that you need from day to day to operate the town. And those are funds that are kept in a depository or checking account. In Virginia, state code says the depository has to be a brick and mortar bank, and the deposits have to be collateralized. So if you're using any bank around here with brick and mortar, you're covered on that. Secondly, you have funds that are needed in the upcoming 1-year period. So these are funds that have to remain liquid. You have to be able to get at these funds when you need them. So they can't really be invested in something that's locked up in a fixed income type of situation. So what local governments use for this, one is the state's local government investment pool, which Chincoteague does use. But I want to make you aware as well, there's another alternative to that, and it's VML's Virginia investment pool. And a third alternative, your checking account may pay interest. That's not usually the case, but in parts of the state we see banks that pay interest on checking. And it may be very competitive at times. So our recommendation is this. Use the source, a high quality source, and any of these are considered the highest quality. The LGIP and VIP both have a AAA rating from Standard & Poor's. They're both equally high quality. They're both recognized in the state code. A checking account up to $250,000, that's going to be insured, and then you have collateral on top of that. So if you can get a great interest rate there, that's a good thing as well. But we want you to consider VIP, the Virginia Investment Pool, for this reason. Although it's also equally high quality to the LGIP, our yield in the Virginia Investment Pool has beat LGIP 90% of the time since VML started this program about 3 years ago. So you're not taking advantage of it. We would hope that you would take a look at it. We have today, I believe it's over $2 billion in assets that are invested by local governments around the state. So do take a look at it for, if nothing else, a little bit better return that you're going to get. Thirdly, you have funds that you don't expect to use in the next 12 months. They could be invested, you don't expect to need them for 1 year or longer. Those are funds that you can try to generate a higher return on, something the town's not currently doing, And we're in a very low interest rate environment. So local governments are looking for ways to do this and to do it safely. So two alternatives that we would put before you to consider. One is CDs, certificates of deposits from banks. All banks are offering them. Currently, the rates are very low, very low. So another alternative is the Virginia Investment Pool. We have a 1 to 3 year high-quality bond fund. It follows the state code in terms of what assets local governments are allowed to invest in. And it's a good way to generate a higher rate of return and to take advantage of what the state code allows you to do. So we'd hope that you would take a look at that as well. What a lot of local governments do, you don't have to put all your eggs in one basket. And there can be volatility with when you're investing in market-based securities like the 1 to 3 year pool. So what a lot of local governments do is they'll take those funds they plan to carry over from year to year. They'll put part into something like VIP, which is actively managed, has a professional fund manager, and maybe part into CDs, kind of hedge your bets in that way to get the best return. Now I'm going to move on from there to the fund balance and reserve fund management. So this is an area that we know that you all wanted to address. You wanted to have a policy for your fund balance. And we think that's an excellent idea to do that, because you may be keeping too much of your funds on the sidelines when they could be used where they're needed. But by all means, you don't want to spend that down and then leave yourself in a vulnerable position. So the way that we look at something like this is we have to look at the town in particular. What financial risks are facing the town? And this is unique to you. Your profile will be different from every other locality in Virginia. So we did that. We looked at these criteria. These are criteria that the Government Finance Officers Association, the Association of the United States and Canada of Financial Officers, these are the factors that they think are most important to consider in a risk analysis. And there's 3 primary risk factors. One is revenue source diversity and stability, and Taylor was just talking about that. And we think you have good diversity in terms of different sources of revenue, but as he said, we're concerned about your two of your major sources being so linked to tourism, and how they could be both impacted by a downturn in tourism. So on this scale, 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest risk, 5 being highest, we put you a little bit above average on that category as a 4. Infrastructure is another factor, and you might be able to help me with this, but the question here is, does the town have infrastructure that is aging or vulnerable to deterioration, where you may unexpectedly need to step up and fund a major capital project? We didn't really fully address that issue. So we listed you as neutral, but I see a little bit of concern with some of you. So let me ask, is that, do you think that we've overrated that risk or underrated it? What are your thoughts?
Well, we do have some aging infrastructure, primarily water lines, but the water system, I think, can sustain that.
Okay, and water, we're gonna address that separately, so we don't need to include it here. But you don't have any bridges or anything that, okay, that we were concerned about that. Thirdly is vulnerability to extreme events. You have that. And I grew up in Florida, so I had it living down there as well. So this is something that any coastal community is going to be concerned about. So we put you number 5 on that. So three primary risk factors. We rated Chincoteague as being a little above average in risk on two of the three factors. So that had a bearing on how we approach this. On secondary factors, pretty neutral on those four. Leverage, amount of debt that you have. You do a great job of not relying on a lot of debt, so we put you at the lowest level there. Why is debt a risk factor? Because when you give your full faith and credit to repay a loan, that part of your budget is pretty inflexible. So it's not really able to address unexpected situations. So we'll go on to the next one. So wanted to look at your general fund balance and how well it's held up in the three audited years, 17, 18, 19. And your fund balance actually was increasing each of those 3 years. In 19 at 55%, meaning your unassigned fund balance, the part of your fund balance that is available to the town to address urgent needs is equal to about 55% of your revenues. You have enough fund balance to operate the town for over 6 months. At least as of fiscal 19, that was the case. So that's very strong. That's very impressive. How about your peer communities? How do they look? Well, we looked at those. Cape Charles, holy moly, they're at over 100% as a ratio of fund balance to revenues. But we know, having worked with Cape Charles, it's a very volatile community. They don't have the same kind of stability that I think that you see here in Chincoteague. And that represents one point in time. We didn't look at 3 years there. So that's probably not very representative. And we know that fluctuates a lot in that town. Chincoteague's at 55%, Warsaw 49%, Kilmarnock 44%, Tappahannock 37%, Colonial Beach 31%. And you can see the comparison in terms of revenues for each of those localities, Colonial Beach being another large locality, about the size or larger than Chincoteague is. Okay, so before we get to the water funds, our conclusion here is that GFOA recommends that for a locality with the risk factors that you were showing, that's moderate to above average risk, they recommend a fund balance between 26 and 35%. But that's for an average community. This is a small community, and small communities need to have larger fund balances. You have fewer revenue sources. So GFOA may be looking at cities with many, many different things that they tax. And a town has fewer options that way. So for a town, you need a larger fund balance than the standard that is being recommended. So we think the 50% fund balance for your general fund is a very good place to be. You're at 55% as of 19. We think 50% is a good goal. So what that means is you want to probably preserve your fund balance as long as it stays at the 50% level. When you go above that, you may have some flexibility to consider moving any new surplus funds that you have into a fund that you can use for capital projects. Again, capital projects is an appropriate way to use those funds because the surplus is a one-time thing. You can't count on it happening every year. It wasn't budgeted, it just happened. And so you want to use those for one-time expenses and not long-term commitments. So that was our recommendation on the general fund balance. And now we're turning to the water fund. So we're good. We're good on that. Okay. On the water fund, since this is an enterprise fund, accountants, instead of calling this a fund balance, will call this unrestricted net position. It's mostly the same thing, but they're really talking about resources that are available for the enterprise to spend. They're not otherwise committed. They're unrestricted net position. And your water fund has demonstrated very strong unrestricted net position. Over 100% in 17 and 19, dipped a bit in 2018. That seems like a very strong net position. So we looked at your peers. How did they compare? Well, Warsaw had even higher percentage. This is unrestricted net position as a percentage of revenues. Warsaw 137%. And then the other four lower than Chincoteague, with Tappahannock only 14%, which represents, about 2 months. Their unrestricted net position represents about 2 months of revenue. There's a lot less flexibility, obviously, than Chincoteague has. So our recommendation is an unrestricted net position of 75%, which is where you were in 2018. It's still a very strong net position to maintain. Of that, I think it'd be helpful to designate 50% of your unrestricted net, 50% of your revenues in the water fund. Designate that portion of your unrestricted net position as an O&M reserve, an operations and maintenance reserve. So let me recap that. So we're saying 75% net position and an amount equal to 50% designated for an O&M reserve. And what's an O&M reserve? That's where that's your cushion as revenues rise and fall during the year. Expenses rise and fall during the year. You go into you're relying on those funds, to get you through those cycles. You can also use them in emergencies as well. The difference between 50% and 75% just gives you an additional cushion that we think is prudent to maintain. And then we would recommend setting up a separate fund. We call it a 3R reserve, repair replacement reserve, 3R. So that as you have surpluses in the water fund, put them into the 3R reserve where they can be used for capital projects. So the capital projects in the water fund should be part of your 5-year capital plan. And you have a fund to receive surpluses that are designated for capital projects in the water fund. The same as the general fund would have a capital fund as well. So we're recommending 2 capital project funds to receive those surplus funds. Keep them separate. We're going to keep the water fund separate from the general fund. And that's our recommendation. So it gives you some targets and kind of a guideline as to when it's safe to move revenues, surplus revenues into these funds to use for capital projects. And then lastly, we looked at the harbor funds. Next page, yeah. Looked at the harbor fund. So your unrestricted net position fluctuated between 27% and 40% there. And our recommendation is go ahead and lock in 25%. That's basically a 90-day reserve as your targeted unrestricted net position. The other funds, as you need them for capital projects associated with the harbor, you can use them for that. The Harbor Fund is user fee supported, so we think it probably doesn't require as large a net position as the other funds do. There's less, our understanding of it's probably less infrastructure that can fail that you might see in a water system. So that's our reasoning for setting that at 25%. And so that's our fund balance recommendation. Okay. And then the last section is debt management. I don't know if I'm running all the time, but this is my last section. So this is an area, Chincoteague has been very conservative about issuing debt, but we think every locality can benefit from having a policy. And there's two key ratios that are used in describing how much debt, is reasonable to take on. I'm not saying you have to go up to the limit, but it gives you a ceiling on future debt that may be issued. So to analyze this, we looked at the ratio, we looked at two measures of debt: gross bonded debt and net bonded debt. So let me explain the difference between these. Bonded debt, municipal advisors refer to bonded debt as general obligation debt that has full faith and credit of the locality. It's what a rating agency will look at first to see how much debt a locality is issuing, how extended they are in terms of issuing debt. So bonded debt. Net bonded debt is also general obligation debt, but we back out debt that was issued for a self-supporting enterprise. So the water fund, we believe, is a self-supporting enterprise. It's responsible for paying that debt. And so we back that out. Under the Constitution of Virginia, local governments have a debt ceiling, how much debt cities and towns are allowed to issue, but they don't count net bonded debt. If the debt service is paid for by a self-supporting enterprise, they don't hold the locality, to show that as part of their outstanding debt. So the distinction is important to make. And when you look at your peers, like Colonial Beach, they have about $20 million in GO debt, but about half of that is enterprise, the water and sewer. So when you take that out, there's about $10 million. And you see the difference with some of these others. Now, we took this calculation from the audits, that the auditors of these localities prepared. And the auditors aren't using consistent definitions in every case. So, and you'll see what I mean in a minute. But these are the auditors' definitions of net bonded debt. So we went with that. In the case of Chincoteague, that's our calculation because all of your debt is enterprise debt. So we believe you have you really have no when you take out the net. You really have no net GO debt, no debt at all. Okay. Okay. Another way to so one of the key debt ratios that you use to measure how much debt a locality has is this one: debt service on net bonded debt as a percentage of general fund expenses. Now, how much of your budget is going to pay for debt service on debt that you've issued? So we're looking at net bonded debt, so we put Chincoteague at 0, and the other localities with higher percentages. Kilmarnock probably needs to watch it getting up to 17%. And so before I get into this one, so we wanted to make a recommendation to the town for this key ratio. Debt service on net bonded debt as a percentage of general fund expenses. Our recommendation is that the ceiling, the maximum that you go is 15%, which for Chincoteague, that's about $13 million. See, I know you have no immediate plans to spend that, but that's where we think you can go. Could a locality like this one manage an expenditure in your budget that's up to 15% that's relatively inflexible? You know, that's the calculation. So we think that would be an appropriate ceiling. And then another key ratio is, this is the constitutional definition in Virginia, net bonded debt as a percentage of taxable real estate. And these are all your peers here. Chincoteague is 0.1%. Now, you were 0 before. Why are you 0.1? It's because in your audit report, this ratio is calculated, and your auditor shows 0.1%. That's their definition, apparently. But the constitutional Virginia definition in Virginia would exclude all enterprise-supported debt. So we really think you're at 0, but we don't want to get in a fight with your auditor, so we put in 0.1%. You're still very, very low. And then these are the other localities there. The highest being Tappahannock with 2.3%. Well, guess what the constitutional ceiling is in Virginia? It's 10%. 10%. So it's a very high ceiling in the scheme of things. And we've only seen one locality that was really, getting close to that. And it was a very small town that had a very large power plant in the town, and they issued debt for that plant. Now, in their case, these revenues were almost a short thing. So we felt it was appropriate to go that high, but normally you're not going to get anywhere near that level in Virginia. Okay, and so those are all the policies. I hope those were helpful. I know time is short, but we're happy to take any questions tonight or after the meeting if you prefer.
Anybody?
That was very interesting. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, it was. And some of the things that you were saying, I heard our past financial director told me a lot of those things. So yes, you're right on the mark.
Good. Yeah, no, it was a pleasure to look at this town. This is a strong town, well managed. All of your measures are very impressive. Many places would like to be in your position.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Except when a hurricane's coming up the coast.
Yeah.
Well, like that's one of the funds that you're talking about, $900,000, but we hope we never have to use it. But like you said, as you say, we're depending on that beach being there and accessibility. So we would be there to help the Fish and Wildlife or Park Service put it back and hopefully get refunded for it. But
Yeah.
like you said, because that is our lifeline, as you can see. That is where the biggest part of our money is. So we had a backdoor plan. And probably, like I said, it'd be nice to invest it, but we need that money just because you don't know what tomorrow brings.
Yeah.
So sometimes it has to be liquid to have that money available to.
And when you have a situation like that, there may be an opportunity to get reimbursed down the line, but acting quickly, a lot of times that's going to determine the future of the community. Is it resilient? Does it get back into place quickly? And I'll just say on the Virginia Investment Pool, and I'm not trying to be a commercial for that, but VML created that program because one of the things that the 1 to 3 year fund does is it invests longer term, but if you were to do that yourself, if you bought longer term, you know, highly rated bonds, you'd be locking up funds for a period of years that you could not access them. With the Virginia Investment Pool 1 to 3 year fund, you're investing in the same things, but you can access your funds there in with about 2 weeks' notice. And then the overnight fund, you can get your funds the same day.
What kind of interest are they paying right now?
I think for a long-term investor who's been in the 1 to 3 year funds, they're earning about 2%. They bought in when, you know, at a better rate environment. In our liquidity pool, the overnight fund, it sounds pretty low, 0.18%. But if you look around, as a business or a government, some individuals have access to other things, but under federal rules, business and government, it's hard to get a good rate that beats even 1.18%, and that's going to be AAA rated, following the state code on what a local government is able to invest in. Whereas some of, like a national money market fund, you'd be hard pressed to find one that paid more, but they may be invested in lower quality securities, whereas we're following the code for local government.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, anyone?
I just have a comment. You know, it's a good feeling when you think that you're doing good, but it is a much greater feeling when a firm like your firm tells you that you are doing good. And I appreciate all the information.
Okay.
Looks good.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you much. We're so glad to be engaged by the town. We'd be delighted to come back at any time if you're planning a project or need municipal advice on any matter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alrighty, next on the agenda is a public hearing for the lot line vacation of Mr. Lawrence Casserly. So I will open it up to the public, if there's any public comment, but I don't think there is, since there's, unless Pat would like to speak. Public here. All right, then I'll close the public participation part of it. I'll open the floor up to Mr. Casserly if he would like to speak. If he'd like to speak, he doesn't have to.
I am here for you folks, so if you have questions, I'm here. If not, happy to let you decide.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I couldn't see on the map where, and I'm just curious where it's located at.
Cleveland Street.
It's
Okay.
Ernest Dale's house.
Okay, on the
And
corner
that lot
there.
on the other
Okay.
side.
Yeah, I was trying to look and I just couldn't see it real well on my computer.
Second house on the right when you turn off.
Great. Is that ours?
Yes,
Or is that ours? Well, okay.
used to be Ernest Dale.
Mm-hmm.
Discussion?
Meets all the criteria. Then make a motion to let him have it.
I'll second. Motion and second. Any discussion? I'll entertain a motion. Wait a minute. We have a motion and properly seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank y'all. All right. Thanks for coming. Probably rushed to get here, didn't you?
Happy Thanksgiving.
You
Same
too.
to you. All righty. Moving on to the comment period. I'll start with Mr. Reed. Anything?
I'll make a vote, like I say, with the people that came here, like Denise says, we're blessed. And I want to thank current town manager, even the past ones, and the current mayor, the past mayors, and all the council. Like you say, they've been very conservative with their money. Just like when this, you don't know whatever's going to happen tomorrow. This pandemic came, I wasn't stressed to no end, you know, and even in that, we've been blessed to no end, you know, that, but like you say, we're very blessed, and thank God for it.
Yep. All right, Mr. McCollum.
I just want to say happy Thanksgiving, everybody, and hope they have a safe holiday, however they choose to spend it.
Vice Mayor?
I want to give a shout out to both Mike and Brian, especially with the salary. increases, Mike worked really hard on that. You know, we kind of gave him a directive to come up with options, and he did so. And then even with Brian and Mike and everybody with the additional EMS staffing, you know, it was easy for us to sit up here and say, you know, give us a plan. And they, you can tell they spent a lot of time and really came up with something hopefully it's going to work. So, you know, appreciation goes out to both of you for that. Thank you.
Denise?
Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback off of that. In a month, where we give thanks, and actually we should be giving thanks all year long, we've been pretty blessed. I am extremely thankful for our employees of this town. They've gone above and beyond this year, and they've done, I think, just about anything that's been asked of them. Can't say enough about them, and I'm glad we've been able to give them this raise, and that everything's turned out all right with that. Would like also to say happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Hope you enjoy your time close with family, and you know, enjoy that time, because you never know when it's not going to be here. So.
All right. Ms. Ellen?
No, I guess not. Everybody said everything I thought, but we have been very fortunate, this town has, and I think they've been very frugal in what they've done through the years. And being here so long, I've seen a lot, I hear a lot, and I think everybody's on the same page. We all want what's best for everybody. And I appreciate all the workers, all the employees, because without your good employees, town wouldn't be here. So, thank you all.
All righty. Well, I just want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving, and hopefully they'll get to see some family. We'll have to wave to them out the window. And my one, I don't know if it's an announcement, but I want to open up discussion with council because of COVID and whatnot. You know, the chamber has seen fit to cancel the parade over concerns of exposure and whatnot. So I want the town to have a mini type parade where it would include town, police, fire company's already on board with it. Whether or not we can get a trolley, because we're doing the trolley route, so we don't have to worry about being off the trolley route. But I want to do a miniature holiday parade with limited exposure, so we don't have to worry about getting anybody sick. No candy, no anything like that. And you all can talk to me about that afterwards. We won't have to talk about it in session, but I'm just throwing it out there just so we can do it. You know, it is the season, and we need to have something, not just say, sorry. So we'll discuss that afterwards. All righty, I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session according to 2.2-3711A 1.3 Code of Virginia to discuss evaluation of senior staff and acquisition of real estate.
Second.
Motion second, all those in favor?
Aye.
All righty, thank y'all.